The first thing you need to do is to reduce the visibility of your pencil lines. We are going to be applying colour pencil, and this will give us the overall shape, detail and texture on our piece of work. You need to start from the background and work to the foreground. The background is whatever is behind your objects, and you move progressively forward to the objects that are closest to the viewer. For me, the object that is closest to the viewer would be the plate. What I wanted to do for the background was to define the shape of the cup and to separate it from the background that you can see. So I've started off with black, and you can see I've applied some heavy pressure where there are darker shadows, and I've applied some lighter pressure where there are lighter shadows. Whilst I am doing this piece of work, it is inspired by a piece of work by Georgia Keefe. So on my laptop to the right, you may not be able to see it, but there is the original piece of work by Georgia Keefe that I was inspired by, and I am basically looking at the sort of the details, the colour, the blending that is in that original painting by Georgia Keefe, and I'm sort of applying it to my version or my drawing, which has been inspired by that particular piece. So I've tried to keep the composition very simple to Georgia Keefe, with a cup, a plate and a single piece of fruit. Here again you can see I'm working mainly on trying to separate the cup from the background. I've started with the black, and as you can see I've blended into that black with a creamy colour. Again, that cream colour is sort of referencing the original piece of work by Georgia Keefe. What you may not be able to see from the colour is I'm using a black and a cream, but I'm also using a slightly red, slightly green black colour to sort of also give it a bit more realism and make it more accurate to the piece of work that I'm inspired by Georgia Keefe. Here what I've done is I've tried to sort of separate the area where the cream meets the white, and I'm trying to sort of get the idea that this is almost a painting, but it has been done in pencil. So you can see little areas of black, which would be sort of replicating when you're painting and you have a bit of leftover black in your brush, and you maybe haven't properly cleaned it, but actually it gives a really interesting effect when it sort of blends unintentionally with another colour. Again, using the rubber to rub out some areas that weren't correct, and the rubber is great to also bring the highlights back into your area where they need to be. Again, I decided to work on this area, and I'm noticing that there is cream, but I'm also noticing there's a sort of a darker cream, and that kind of is blended into the lighter cream. And this area was quite tricky because it isn't completely coloured in with cream. There was a mixture of white and cream, but what I wanted to do at the beginning was I wanted again to sort of define the cup, have it standing off from the background. And then once I'd done that, and I also done that around the sort of the shape of the fruit and the fruit bowl or the fruit plate, as you can see there, using a darker colour and then going over it with cream to kind of make a darker cream. I then began to sort of map out the sort of areas that were cream. So it was a majority of that space there is cream, but it does blend in with the white. So that's why you can see I've got the white pencil there. So where I've made a mark and I'm thinking potentially it's a bit too cream and it's not blending enough, I've gone over it with a white pencil to tone it down, to get it to blend back into the background and the white. So you can see it starting to build up there. The rubber used to bring back the original white paper where it was a bit too cream. You can see it much better on the shot. And as you can see now, I'm working to the foreground. Okay, I'm working on the plate. And with this, it is a majority of greys, light greys, dark greys, a tiny bit of black. And when you're working with black pencil, you need to be very careful about the amount you put in terms of pressure. It's very difficult to get the black to come out of your picture if you push too hard. So you can sort of see working on the shadow area as also underneath the plate, but also sort of simultaneously working on the shadows in the creases that are in the original piece of work. And I'm not trying to copy the photograph I've taken in terms of every individual crease, because it is impossible. So what you just want to do is you can try to sort of take some of the original creases from your photograph, take some of the original creases from your inspired piece of work, and that's just taking elements of sort of what you have photographed and the work that Georgia Keefe has made, and getting it to combine and to blend together and to create sort of a new outcome. So nothing is original, it's just the way that you combine your own style with an artist's style, and that is what creates sort of a unique piece of work. Again, so using the black as a sort of an underlayer, and then using the blue to kind of make it a blue-black colour. We don't just wanted, or I just didn't want to have just shades of grey. I wanted again to sort of look at that original piece of work by Georgia Keefe, and I noticed that she has a lot of black and blue mixed in together to create shadows. Again, you can see much tension there is focused on separating the objects from the background, but also the sheet as well. We want to make everything look like it's an object within its own right, which it is. And you want to make sure that you can see, and it gives sort of realism and depth to your picture when you're able to sort of define shapes and define objects and separate them from their backgrounds. Again, using a blue, using a darker blue there for some sections, using the black. So it's a lot of mixture of black and blue and different types of blue. So in that whole sheet, there's only, one colour, which is blue, and then different shades of blue, and obviously a black as well, and a grey sort of being mixed into that as well, or a black sort of applied very lightly to create a grey. Here I'm working on this sort of the shadow area, and this is where I am using the grey. But also looking at the original picture, I noticed that there is grey that obviously gives the plate its shape. But I also noticed in the original picture there was some cream mixed into that, so sort of where almost one is replicating the lighting situation. So white tends to absorb or tends to reflect light, doesn't it? Well, so it reflects whatever colour the light is in that room. So not every light is pure white. In fact, it's impossible. Most lights are a creamy kind of colour, so you can sort of see that coming in with the reflection. There, what I did is I think I very briefly beforehand sort of defined the shadow area underneath the fruit. And here again, I'm focusing on the plate to get that to look realistic and to look rounded. You might also notice that I'm doing directional shading, which is the shade in the direction of your shape. So these shapes here are curved. So my shading is going in a curved direction. This helps to give your objects form and shape. If you shade up and down on a shape that is three-dimensional and round, it does not make it look three-dimensional. It makes it look flat. And what we want to do is we want to sort of give the viewer the impression that our object is real, and therefore the shape dictates the shading. Again, using the white just to tone down the grey to get it to blend back out into the paper. Shadow, again, working into the shadow. Not just, again, a mixture of just pure black and different shades of grey, but also you can see the blue. And the tip is to be using colours conservatively, but also quite creatively at the same time. So this section here, again, to the left or my right of my hand, you can't see it, but there is a picture of the original artist's work. So these purples and these blues are a direct copy or transfer of sort of detail onto an original picture that I've taken that I've obviously then drawn later. This is what gets us to work in the style of the artist. is using inspiration for colours and for blending techniques, but obviously using our own objects for our theme and our project, which is obviously objects of desire. Again, here the white is being used to tone down some of these purples and these blues. And what we see here is the beginning of the fruit shape. Now what I wanted to do is I wanted to, in that initial stage, try and map out where the most obvious areas of orange were. And once I felt that I'd mapped out where that orange is, that's when I felt comfortable to start applying the red. And to get that red to blend into the orange, I lightened the pressure where I was going over the orange sections. So the orange began to show through the red. Again, the orange is really important because it is the lightest colour. So the lightest colour has to go at the bottom, the darkest colour has to go at the top. And then obviously the way that you apply the darkest colour will allow the brightest colour to continue to be seen. Again, hopefully you can see this directional shading. This is where it gets really important to remember those principles and that technique of shading in the direction and the shape of your object. This is what helps to give your object shape and form, and what it does is it makes your object look like a 3D form because you're shading in the direction of your object. So our fruit there is curved, it is round, so we want to make sure we're going in that curved direction. It starts to become a bit straighter, those lines, when they get towards the centre. Not perfectly straight lines as you get towards the centre of the fruit. They're still curved, but they're less curved, or a little bit less extreme in the curvature of those lines. But as you get to the outside, you start to see them becoming a lot wider and a lot rounder. And that's really important. So they have to sort of straighten up as you get towards the centre of your fruit or of any round object. But as it gets to the edges, you must ensure that they're a lot more rounder and curvier. And as you can see here, going over certain areas to bring back the areas of orange. And here was the last step, which is just to add some black. Again, black is overpowering, so just try to use it carefully as to not make it look too graphical. And that's the end of the drawing demonstration.